Hello, and welcome to Own Your Retirement. My name is Albert Lalonde from Kaizen Financial. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 586-752-7008 or visit us online at www.kaizenfinancialinc.com. Click on my podcast page and you can check out our past shows or also subscribe to our program on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Okay. Well, deciding when to retire and whether you're truly ready may be one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. And yet, for a lot of people, the planning side of that decision gets less attention than it deserves. In fact, one of the first questions people ask is, how much income do I actually need in retirement? You'll hear a common rule of thumb that says aim for about 80% of what you were earning before you retired. And while that's a reasonable place to start, it really is just a starting point. Now, the truth is that retirement income planning is deeply personal. What works for one household may look completely different for another. Now, someone could have, let's say, a fulfilling, comfortable retirement on $5,000 a month, and someone else may need $50,000 a month to live the life they, envisioned. Neither is wrong, they're just different. So today, we're going to talk about what defines a good retirement income, where that income could come from, and how to think about building a picture that actually fits your life rather than relying on a generic formula. Now, because before let's say you hand in that notice at work and walk out that door for the last time, you want to feel as confident as possible that the financial side is taken care of. And that's what we're here to help with today. So let me bring in my co-host, Tony Shore, who's always a great thought partner on these type of conversations.
Oh,
Hey, Tony, how we doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I have some thoughts. All right. First of all, for our viewers out there, we've done one or two shows so far since you've had your arm worked on, but people may notice that Albert's arm right now is in a sling.
Right.
I just want to clarify that that happened because Albert made the mistake of challenging me to an arm wrestling match.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what, he underestimated my power, and
I did.
yeah.
He's more than just the voice, guys. Be careful.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You would stomp me in an arm wrestling match. I know you work out a lot, quite a bit. But you had an operation there on your arm,
Yes.
and it's healing nicely. However, that's going to cut into your golf game, isn't it?
That's for the whole year. It's done. So,
Oh, that's
yes,
tough.
I had to come to that conclusion, but that's okay. 1
And
year.
how did you injure that again?
Oh, just old wrestling injury that I just never healed from 30 years ago, and
Oh,
then all the years in the gym afterwards. So a lot of wear and tear, and then
yeah.
maybe
Just
a
need to
couple
get it
tendons.
repaired. Yeah.
Yep.
You finally had surgery on it, and now you're recovering, so that's good. You think your golf game will come back?
Oh yeah, it should. I mean, it can't get any worse. Let's put it that way with a
Oh,
better
no.
shoulder.
Sure. That's great. Other than that, you've been good, right? You've been
Yeah.
busy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's spring in Michigan. You know how that goes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
getting the
Rain
whole
and
yard work and everything ready to
yeah.
go.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
good. Same
Same.
thing in Minnesota, right?
Yep, same here. Same here. We're actually experiencing a little bit of spring this year, which we haven't had for a couple of
Right.
years. Yeah, it usually goes from winter to summer, and it's just like, interesting. Well, speaking of interesting, that range you said from $5,000 a month versus $50,000 a month,
Yeah.
it puts it in perspective. It's not a one size fits all. But this is the big question, right? This is the question you get from everybody. How much do I need to retire? How much monthly retirement income is going to be enough? And do I have enough?
Right.
These are the big question. But again, it's not a one size fits all answer. If you see an article that says you need $1.27 million to retire, I saw that the other day. You laugh and don't read it because that doesn't make sense. There is no one magic number for everyone. But where do you like to start when somebody comes to you, Albert, and asks, am I ready to retire? How do you respond to that?
I get that question all the time, especially in
Yeah,
the courses that I help teach. And like you said, there is no one size fits all, formula because everyone has a different lifestyle. So throughout today's conversation, we're going to be using data information from a recent U.S. News and World Report article titled "What is a Good Monthly Income in Retirement." And we're also going to share some surveys too results that came from a review on a U.S. News and World Report article as well. But let's talk about what good retirement income actually means. Because I think a lot of people assume this is harder to figure out than it really is. Now,
sure.
here's something that may surprise you, though, Tony. Many people already have a pretty solid sense of what they need. That's because for most retirees, the budget doesn't change as dramatically as you might expect. Now, you're not suddenly living a completely different financial life. Your housing costs are largely the same. Your utilities are the same. The core expenses tend to follow you into retirement. Now, with that said, what does change is some of the work related spending. Commuting cost goes away. Line items like the daily lunch out and the work wardrobe shrink or maybe even disappear. But in their place, other expenses could arise. Travel that we got put off, let's say, during your working years, new hobbies, more time for entertainment and experiences, let's say.
Yeah. Well, and that's true. It's almost like a reallocation more than a reduction, right? You're shifting maybe around
That
more.
is yes, that is a
Yeah.
great way to put that, Tony, and what's really important to understand is that retirement income needs could shift depending on where you are in retirement itself and different stages. Now, during the first few years of retirement, many people tend to spend more. It's new. It's trying to fill in those hours. You're active, you're younger, you're checking things off on your bucket list, You're doing the things that you always said you'd do someday. But then mid retirement often settles into a slower rhythm. Spending may ease up a bit. Life gets a little quieter, let's say.
Yeah. Well, yeah, hopefully it gets a little quieter,
Right.
right? I mean, that's the thing. And then what about later in retirement though?
Well, that's where costs could climb back up again. And this is the part people don't always plan for, but the healthcare needs tend to increase. Long term care becomes a real possibility for many households. And it's not just a straight line. Retirement income planning should account for that arc. And then one more thing worth noting that, where you live matters. What's comfortable in one part of the country could fall well short in another. So cost of living varies significantly, and that has to factor in to the picture.
Yeah. Oh, for sure it does. So, how does somebody actually then put a number on all this? I mean, that's what we're trying to get to here,
Yep.
right?
Well, honestly, Tony, many people could get a reasonable estimate on their own, especially if they have a clear, let's say, sense of their current spending. Now, that's if they, again, understand what they're spending. But I'd also really encourage people to work with a financial services professional before making any final decisions. And not because the math is impossible, but because there are variables that, are easy to miss and the stakes are high. So, an experienced financial service professional could help you build a more accurate picture. And that peace of mind is generally, I would say, worth something.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely worth something. So, you've been talking about how personal all this is, and everybody's situation is different. I'm curious, is there data out there that gives people a general benchmark, though? I mean, what does the average retiree actually spend?
Yeah, there is, in fact. And I think it's worth looking at not as a target, but as a reference point. But the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks consumer spending, and their most recent figures from 2024 show that U.S. households headed by someone age 65 or older bring in around $67,000 a year before taxes and spend roughly about $61,000.
Yeah. Well, and that means they're spending just under what they're bringing in. It's not good that it's tight, but at least at least they're spending under what they're bringing in. But it is a tighter margin than I expected.
Well, it is. And here's what I find even more telling. A 2024 survey by the Employee Benefit Research Institute, they looked at about 3,600 retirees between the ages of 62 and 75. And the picture it paints is eye-opening because the majority are spending well under $4,000 a month, actually.
So break that down a little bit for us.
All right. So let's say we have about 17% of retirees in that survey spent less than $1,000 a month. Another 28% were in the $1,000 to $1,999 range. And then about 21% were spending $2,000 to $2,999, and 14% were in that $3,000 to $3,099 range. Now, when you add all of that up, we're talking about roughly 80% of retirees spending less than $4,000 a month.
Wow. So that's striking. And honestly, it's a little reassuring for people who may be worried that they need some enormous number to retire comfortably. I mean, I know people who've retired comfortably on $5,000 or less. I'm sure you've worked with other people who are going to need $5 million to retire and live the lifestyle they want, right?
Well, yes, and that's a good takeaway. But now you have to understand the other side of the numbers as well. So the other 20%, those spending $4,000 or more,
Sure.
they're out there too. So that's it balances that average. But about 8% are in the $4,000 to $4,999 range. 5% are in the $5,000 to $5,999 range, and about 7% are spending $6,000 or more per month. So clearly the range is wide, but the data does suggest that for many retirees, a comfortable life may not require the kind of income that keeps people up at night. And keep that in mind too. This is with folks at those age range that mostly don't have any debt as well, Tony.
Yeah. Well, and before we keep going with this, Albert, I really think the importance is, and the key to making this all work and figuring it out is working with a trusted professional, a financial planner, a financial advisor like yourself, who does this all the time, day in and day out, works out, gets to know you, your financial situation, and that's what you do, and then comes up with a written plan for retirement income and income in retirement, to minimize tax burdens, to make sure you have the money there when you need it, and to make sure you're going to have enough to last as long as you do. That's the key. So before we go on, let our listeners know how they can schedule that no charge, no obligation consultation to ask you questions or get that plan in place.
Yeah, folks, if you're looking to figure out your income planning needs, just give us a call at 586-752-7008 or visit us online at www.kaizenfinancialinc.com. Scheduling takes only a few minutes, and we're always happy to help you to own your retirement.
All right. Well, that sounds fantastic. Appreciate that. Now, I know that this has been an important conversation. Once somebody has a sense of what they'll need each month or what their number is, I guess the next question is pretty straightforward. Where does that money actually come from, and do I have enough?
Yeah, great questions. And actually, a lot of people ask that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really where the planning work gets interesting.
Sure.
I like to think of it in terms of 5 main buckets that retirees commonly draw from. First, you've got your Social Security, then an investment portfolio, you have annuities, you have part-time employment, and you have pensions. And depending on someone's situation, there could also be rental income or something like a reverse mortgage that taps into home equity.
Ah, okay. Home equity. Interesting. I know that can tend to be an interesting thing, but it's a solid list. Social Security, you've got your 401ks, your IRAs, maybe you have a pension. Where do most people land in terms of what they're actually relying on, though?
Well, Social Security tends to be the foundation for most people today. In fact, according to the Social Security Administration, nearly 90% of people who are 65 and older receive it right now. And as of January 2026, the average monthly benefit for retired workers was around $2,071 a month, which, works out to just under $25,000 a year.
Yikes. And really, you can't live on that just by itself. I mean,
No.
that's not a lot to live on.
It's not. And that's the critical point, though, because Social Security was never designed to be the whole picture. In fact, it's just a piece of the picture. If someone is counting on it as their primary source of income, well, that could create a real strain. And then the gap between Social Security provides and what someone actually needs has to come from somewhere else.
Yeah. And some people think maybe part-time work could fill the gap, right? Maybe they'll just keep working part-time to fill that gap if they need
Yep.
more income.
They do, and part-time work can absolutely play a good role. But here's what I often tell my clients is you can't count on that indefinitely, right? I mean, at some point, physically getting to a job may not be an option. Maybe health changes, energy changes, life changes. So
Yeah.
relying on continued employment as a long-term backup, well, as a strategy like that, it carries some real risk.
Yeah. Well, of course it does. And you want to make sure that you have an answer for that. What is a potential answer for people out there?
Well, building during your working years, your 401ks, IRAs, and annuities are tools that may create income you don't have to show up somewhere to earn. In fact, the goal is to arrive at retirement with enough accumulated and structured income that Social Security becomes a complement to your plan, not the plan itself. And that's the difference between feeling more financially secure in retirement and feeling like you're just getting by. Now, we've talked about where retirement income could come from, but there's another layer to this that people don't always think through carefully, and that's how you actually convert savings into a reliable monthly cash flow.
Right. There you go. Because it's not just a matter of having money saved up and pulling it from wherever you need it or whenever you need it, right? There's more to it than that.
Yeah. In fact, completely agree with you, Tony. And that's a really important distinction. One of the most well known guidelines is what we call the 4% rule, which is the idea that you could withdraw 4% of your savings each year and have a reasonable chance of not outliving your money. Now, ultimately, if someone has saved, let's say, $1 million, that's about $40,000 a year. If
Mm.
they've saved $500,000, that's $20,000 a year.
Wow. And that's putting some real numbers around what quote unquote enough saved really means, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But here's where it gets more complicated though. The 4% rule doesn't fully account for taxes, and taxes could have a significant impact on how far your withdrawals actually go.
How so? What do you mean by that?
Well, many retirees have the bulk of their savings in, let's say, traditional 401ks or IRAs. And every dollar that comes out of those accounts is taxable as ordinary income. And age 73, the IRS requires you to start taking what are called required minimum distributions, or for short, RMDs. Now, you don't get to choose whether to take them. And depending on the size of those accounts, RMDs could push someone into, let's say, a higher tax bracket than they were expecting.
Hmm. And that means the retiree could end up with less spendable income than they had planned for, even though the account balance looks healthy on paper, is what you're saying.
Yes, that's exactly the risk. And which is why tax planning and not just investment planning is such an important part of the retirement income conversation. One strategy some people consider is converting, let's say, money from a traditional account into a Roth account before they retire. So Roth withdrawals in retirement are tax free. In fact, the possible trade off is that you pay taxes at the time of the conversion. It's not a free lunch, you know that. But for the right person at the right time, it could actually be meaningfully reduced for the tax burden later.
So, what I hear in all of this, especially what you're saying there, it sounds like the sequencing, or basically when you're taking the money out and from where matters the most, even more than the actual total amount you have saved up.
You
It's
got it.
when you take it or from where you take it,
Yep,
right?
it can matter enormously, Tony, in
Yeah.
fact. And it's one of the reasons I encourage anyone approaching retirement to work with a financial service professional and a tax professional on this. The math may look straightforward on the surface, but the tax implications like timing and account types are details that can add up quickly. And getting them right could make a real difference in what you actually take home each month.
Yeah. Well, and I know we've covered a lot of ground. You're talking about retirement income needs, where the money comes from, how to convert savings into cash flow, the tax picture. These are all elements of what you do to help your clients and people you work with. And but what strikes me is there's a lot of moving parts here. I think it's probably too much to navigate on your own. So, what does working with somebody like yourself, a financial professional, actually look like in practice? For our listeners or viewers out there,
Yeah.
what does that relationship do for someone?
That's a great question. And I think it's worth spending some time, real time on it, because I find that a lot of people have this vague sense that they should work with the financial service professional, but they're not always sure what that actually means for them day to day. And so let me start with Social Security, because it's one of the areas where professional guidance could make the biggest difference and where mistakes can be the costliest. In fact, Social Security decisions are permanent. Once you file, well, that's largely your path, and the timing of when you claim could mean a difference of tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your retirement.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And I imagine most people don't realize just how many variables go into that decision.
Yeah. And when do I turn on my Social Security is a question. Most people think that that's a simple question. But underneath that question is a lot of layers: your age, your health, and life expectancy, whether you're married and how your spouse's benefit factors in, whether you're still working, how your benefit interacts with, let's say, your income sources and what that means for your taxes. A financial services professional could help you model different claiming scenarios side by side so that you're not guessing. You're looking at actual projections based on your specific situation and making an informed decision rather than just going with what, let's say, a neighbor told you that worked for them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, right, and it brings up something I think probably a lot of our listeners may relate to, Albert, and that's the amount of well-meaning but incomplete advice or myths that float around about all this,
Yes,
right?
it's everywhere. We know it. And, it can come from good places like friends, even family, or even articles online from reputable sources. But retirement planning is not a one size fits all. And advice that was right for someone else's situation could actually steer you in the wrong direction. So, a financial service professional isn't just bringing knowledge, but bringing the ability to apply that knowledge to your specific circumstances, let's say. And that's a potentially meaningful distinction. And when it comes to retirement income planning more broadly, that personalized approach could be the difference between a plan that holds up and one that starts to show cracks 5 or 10 years in.
Yeah. Well, true. So, what does the broader planning process look like then when somebody comes to you to work with you?
Well, it starts with a clear picture of where someone stands today. We have to figure that out. Okay. And then what they save, what they owe, what income sources they could expect, and then what their spending is likely to look like in retirement. From there, we start building a strategy that coordinates all of those pieces, not just one or two of them. Now, that might mean looking at how to sequence withdrawals from different account types to manage the tax impact. It might mean evaluating whether an annuity could provide, let's say, more predictable income floor or foundation that takes pressure off the rest of the portfolio. It might mean running projections on different retirement dates to see how a few more years of, let's say, contributions could change the pictures as well.
Yeah. Well, it really is a comprehensive process you're talking about. It's more than just picking investments, obviously.
Bingo, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where some people have this, let's say, an outdated picture of what a financial services professional does. It's not just about managing a portfolio, folks. It's about building a coherent income strategy that accounts for longevity, healthcare costs, inflation, taxes, and, well, the unexpected. And because all of those things are real factors that could affect whether your money lasts as long as you need it to or not. Now, longevity risk is one that doesn't get enough attention, and people are living longer nowadays from modern medicine technology. A retirement that lasts 25 or, let's say, 30 years isn't uncommon right now. So that's a long time to make your money work and a long time for things to go wrong if the plan isn't built to last.
Yeah. And I imagine having that professional relationship also provides something less tangible, which is the relief that you get from knowing somebody is helping you watch over your strategy, a professional who specializes in that. And that helps you sleep well at night. And that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, the power of teamwork is something that I don't think should be underestimated. Retirement is supposed to be a chapter you enjoy. When people are anxious about whether their money is going to hold up, that anxiety doesn't just stay in the background, it affects how they live and their health. So, working with someone you trust who knows your situation and is helping you stay on track could free you up to actually enjoy the retirement you worked so hard to build. And that's ultimately what this is all about, folks. Not just the numbers, but the life those numbers are meant to support.
Yeah. That's the bottom line. I think that's fantastic. So if our listeners out there have any questions or want to get a plan in place, how can they get a hold of you to set up that no charge, no obligation consultation?
Yeah, folks, if you have questions about your retirement, your financial strategy, how your income is going to be put out for you in retirement, visit my website, please, at www.kaizenfinancialinc.com or call my office at 586-752-7008. We'd love to help you build your financial strategies. Remember, it is our goal to help you own your retirement, folks.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Albert. Great show today. Listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of Own Your Retirement with our host, Albert Lalonde.
Take care, folks.